Hi everyone, it's Steve from the workshop once again, and I hope you're all well. Over the winter I've got a couple of small projects going on the boat, and that's mainly in between bouts of really horrible weather here, and today is the first time the sun is sort of shining out there. It's nice, but it's really wet out there. One of the jobs that I really want to do is I've got to get a sheet of plywood out and cut it outside. At the moment the bench is wet and the ground is wet and everywhere's wet, so that's not going to happen. So instead what I'm doing is working on one of the small things that I can do, and that's attending to the boat's stowage, particularly the heavy things, and that's the anchors and the water stowage, which again, heavy item stowage. I thought as well it might be a bit of fun today to talk about the boat's anchors, because I've had a few comments and criticisms about my anchor choices, mainly about the Admiralty pattern anchor, which people seem to have a lot of problem with, but also my hugely oversized Rockner 6 kilo anchor, which is ridiculously large for the boat. But I think it came from my Hunter Liberty, which is a 22-foot boat and 1.5 tons. And it was a superb anchor for that. It's not going to be a long-term anchor. It just so happens that I have it at the moment, and it's going to come with me, and eventually I'll replace it for a smaller 5 or 4 kilogram anchor. So let's just talk about stowage for a moment. So look, I come from a background of IOR, that's the International Offshore Rule racing boats, from course tenors right up to maxis, and we learnt a lot of lessons in that world from the 1979 Fastnet race disaster and onwards. And one of the many lessons we learnt was that you really have to attend to the stowage of the boat, and that's not just where things are stowed in the boat, because weight is critical on those boats, they're very sensitive to weight, but also things that are well stowed, they're actually tied down, lashed into the boat or securely fastened into the boat. And that's because things like parts of engines were just coming loose and flying around inside the boat, and even worse, lead acid batteries, heavy things crashing around inside the boat. Anchors the same, and that's just because they've been placed in lockers, and boats were having knockdowns or being completely inverted. So on a small boat like the Pathfinder, which is a potentially capsizable boat, one of the crucial things I've got to do is tie heavy things into the boat so they can't get loose, in the event of a knockdown or a capsize. So that's largely what I'm doing today with the big Admiralty pattern anchor. So the standard in the standard plans for the Pathfinder, what John shows, which is normal practice, is a bow anchor well. And I haven't built one on this Pathfinder because I just don't ever use them, and that is because I don't like having that much weight, or the weight of an anchor and its chain and warp, right upon the bow of the boat. I think it adversely affects boats all the time. So as I said before, I think weight, how much you carry and where you carry it, is really important. So with heavy things like anchors and heavy things like water containers, what I really like to do is to get them into as close to the centre as possible and as low down as possible, and then completely secured in. So the things that I'm working on securing are the 2 anchors in their 2 different positions, the water containers, and at the same time, off camera, what I'm working on is the battery stowage, and that'll be the single largest thing on the boat. That's going to be something like 65 kilograms, and that's going to be in the middle, low down, and very well secured. Mainly what I'm working on at the moment is the stowage of the Admiralty pattern anchor, which is 10 kilos or 22 pounds. So that's a significant bit of weight to start doing damage if it got loose. It has 2 stowage positions, which you've probably seen now, one being in the cockpit and one being in the cuddy. That's 2 choices of where I can carry it at sea. And of course the 3rd position for the anchor is on the bottom at anchor. Also with anchor there are 2 warps, and so I just wanted to show and tell how I use the 2 warps for that anchor. What you can see in the bags, one is a climber's rope bag and one is an arborist's rope bag. The black rope in the black bag is 11mm low stretch kern mantle. It has a straight fibre core and then a braided sheath, and the braided sheath is very, very dense. It's very resistant against sort of sand and grit getting in there. The second warp is actually a climber's rope, and it's a 9mm sport climbing rope, a 60-metre length, and that warp I specifically use as a stern anchor warp when I have to deploy an anchor astern when I'm running onto a beach, and that then becomes the haul off line. And I found that 50 to 60 metres is about what I need when I'm doing that to have a good length of haul off. The Admiralty pattern anchor has or owns 2 specific warps at the moment, because it's an all warp setup. Don't normally use chain with the Admiralty anchor. A very small and very important detail with the use of rope bags is that the warp mustn't be coiled into the bag, and that's especially true of the long stern warp. And so with the white warp in the yellow rope bag there, the warp is figure-eighted, from the bottom up, and it's the top run, the running end, is then tied into the anchor, and that basically means that the warp will run out cleanly without snagging or trying to knot itself on the way out. But it doesn't go through anything, any cleat or fair lead. It just runs out cleanly until I need to snub the boat when we're running onto a beach, for example. I've actually covered this technique in my main blog, and so I'll put a link to that in the video description. One of the main things I want to point out in this video is the standard way in which I anchor. Obviously, like most people, I anchor off the bow, but I don't work there. The bow of the Pathfinder, it's a small boat, and the big problem there, of course, is that there's a big cuddy in the way. So I have no intention whatsoever of clambering over the cuddy and messing around with an anchor up on the bow and then trying to clamber back over the cuddy into the cockpit. So what I do with this boat, and what I did with my previous boat, is I do all of my work from the cockpit. It's stable, it's secure, all the weight is there, and I deploy the anchor either in the standard bow on anchoring position or the stern anchor from the cockpit. What it means is there's a little bit of trickery with the lines, so the primary anchor warp goes up to the bow, and one arm of that comes back again. I'll just quickly show you this on video, and you can then see what I'm talking about. One of the main points here is that the anchor warp runs through either a block or a low friction eye at the bow. The one I'm showing you is a block because I just happen to have that one laying around. It's not the one I'm actually going to use in practice, and the device that I'm going to use there most likely is one of the Barson low friction rings, which are incredibly simple and they're really effective, and that will be mounted on the bowsprit with a strop or a lacing.